We are looking for that one person in life, all of us deep down, that we can trust. When the two of you met, how did you know that you were going to be friends?
I think desperation.
I was heavily bullied, personally.
Really?
Heavily. I was like between 95 to 105 kilos, and I'm tall. And I've gone through hell in high school. You need a Steve Jobs in crypto. I come from a very lower middle class family, and after that, honestly, money has not made any difference to me. Money being printed today is resulting in a lower value of what you own.
Yeah.
Right? It's the opposite in Bitcoin. It's why there's so many racist comments against Indians on Twitter. Right?
Because it was smart as fuck.
My father's goal for me was to become a school teacher. Her main purpose for existence is to have kids. He tried very hard and I left home. I think I moved to London after you graduated. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank God I'm not that old.
Not at all. You're Gen Z.
Old as Gen Z.
I spent 3 years there, and then I came back here. I was employee number 3 at this tiny startup when TikTok left India. It was called Mitro.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so we literally...
They were like TikTok for India.
TikTok for India, like 2 days after TikTok left the market. And I spent a year building with them after they were thrown out of the market. A conversation that we'll be having in America in 10 days, which is... I don't. It's not settling in. Like, I don't know how that's going to play.
I still can't digest the news. Like, I think it's just fear-mongering. It's like the number of influencers who are going to go out of business, who are going to go bankrupt because of this is...
Do you think the deal will go through with Frank McCourt trying to buy it? It will.
I actually think so.
Because?
Given the kind of backlash that ByteDance has received in the US from like the existing government, there's a huge possibility that will happen. The idea basically is they don't want Chinese companies owning data.
Right.
So if that is the ethos, they're okay with American companies owning data. So think about it that way, right? Like they need somebody who is affiliated to the United States in some way, shape or form, is in some way, shape or form American, and then because of that, the data will go to them.
But they had the deal fall through with Oracle.
Yeah, but that has happened because Larry is in the deal. So, I mean, Adobe deals fall through, like a lot of big company deals fall through because at that stage, the amount of leverage you have is exceptionally high.
Right.
And you can move the world, right? So, because of that, you're not like pressured by anyone, and that includes the government.
Right.
TikTok, unfortunately, is not at that level in the US. So, they have to compromise, otherwise, they will not have a future. So I believe that maybe like them shutting down, I don't see happening. Maybe like the data side of the business would be sold to an American company.
Right.
And then the rest of it would be operated under the brand of TikTok. I don't see it like rebranding to another company.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
But there's a lot of fear in America around the algorithm of TikTok also and the type of stuff they're feeding American people.
How is it different from Meta's? It is not.
Okay.
Meta copied it word for word. Like the entire algorithm team was poached from TikTok in China and hired by Meta 3.5 years ago, right after COVID. So and then COVID is basically when TikTok just went crazy. Like it was always viral. It was always like the one-stop shop for like, doom scrolling throughout the day in China. But after COVID, it was worldwide. It was so viral in India. And in July when it was born, I remember it banned like in July 2020. It was such a massive backlash, like, oh my God, you can't do this. But I'm so glad, honestly, that the Indian government had the balls to do it. Yeah. And in order to ban TikTok, by the way, they banned like 45 other apps.
Yeah, exactly.
The purpose was to only ban TikTok, but they knew that if they single TikTok out, there would be international backlash, that you're preventing freedom of speech and like content creation, UGC, like user-generated content, etc. So because of that, they banned like another 40 apps, which, by the way, have existed in India since like 2010. So like Cam Scanner was one of the apps that was banned.
CapCut was one of them.
Exactly. And they've existed since I was in high school. So like they've been around for over a decade before they were banned. Why? That's because TikTok was the main thing that had to ban, and in order to do that, they banned all Chinese apps. But they did not ban Paytm because Paytm is an Indian company with majority capable Chinese, majority data within Paytm visible to Chinese investors, still not banned. Why? Because it's an Indian company. So to me, it was more of theatrics and saying that we care about the data of the users, but in reality, it was, hey, if they alone have the data, that's not okay. We also want the data because Paytm data is visible to the government. So I have a lot of conspiracy theories about these kind of things.
Yeah, conspiracy theories also. That's interesting.
Though even with the acquisition, even if Frank were to buy TikTok, where does the data still go? Because he's an individual entity who owns like the Los Angeles Dodgers. What's he gonna do?
Exactly. No idea. No fucking idea. That's why I'm just like stunned with the announcement that just came out. That I knew that these conversations were happening, but there were so many conversations that were happening. But now with the announcement in literally 10, 12 days, it's gonna be fucking banned.
Oh, that's an understatement. I think India was still ready for it in some capacity because it was being pushed for a period of time by the Modi government.
Yeah.
But in America, it's fallen through so many times, and
it's like the boy who cried fire.
Exactly.
That's what it is. So now It's like, even though it's been announced, I'm like, is it really true? Like, is it really happening? Because in India, I really like this about Modi, and it's very similar to what Xi Jinping does in China. Because you say something and you do it within a 48-hour notice. Mm-hmm. Which is extremely rare in democracies. And I know that it's a little bit of the gray area, that is it even a true democracy if you can do that? Because that's too much power for an individual or a party to have. But at the same time, it's more effective.
Yes.
And in my opinion, I have I don't know if you're going to sort of publish this, but I believe that democracies are broken. Democracy as an economic theoretical concept is broken.
How would you change a democracy?
It needs to be an autocratic democracy.
Okay.
Basically, similar to what China has, but the difference being more along the lines of actually having a competitive party in the picture as well. So like in China, you only have CCP, right? The Communist Party. Yeah. And they do elections, but they're like, are they elections?
Yeah.
So it's more theater. So I believe that there should be elections, there should be a competitor, and that's why the democracy would actually come down to like 50, 51, very, very close to the inflection point of actually being a sort of winner. But it needs to be autocratic. Like the party needs to be very clear that we want to do things our way. If you elect us, we have complete power. Like that should be the ethos of the constitution. And this is just coming from a very academic point of view. I'm not a PhD in economics. I've just done an undergrad. But based on what I've always admired about economics is that you can make shit happen.
Yes.
And you can't make shit happen in democracies. Mm-hmm. There's too much bureaucratic nonsense in every country. In India, in the US, in oh my God, in the UK. It's bonkers, right? So, yeah.
There are two sides to it, because in a democracy, as we know it, every 4 or 5 years you have elections, and so you might have one party in power right now and then a different party later, and so a company's growth is very long term. You can't just make a difference in 4 or 5 years, so it does come down to a lot of theatrics, which is bad because having one party in power for 15 years, you could do a lot.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, if you have the wrong people in power, it could, an autocratic...
We are all thinking about the same person right now. Who's been around for 20 years and running a country and set to have elections, but do they?
Sure, but... Yeah, so if you have the wrong person in power, so how
do you differentiate between a right and wrong person?
That's a good question.
When the two of you met, how did you know that you were going to be friends? Because you are both equally the right person.
I think desperation.
A brief sense. Can you tell he was lonely when he met me?
Or something. Oh my God, that was an insane answer.
He was very lonely when he met me. So.
Was it right after COVID?
No. I've known him for 15. We've been best friends for 15 years.
Oh wow, you're tolerating each other.
I've been tolerating him.
One of you is tolerating me. So how'd you meet?
School. He Sri Ramarabli.
Oh nice.
He was in Heritage and then he...
Oh, you're from Heritage?
Yeah.
We used to make fun of you.
Yeah, I used to make fun of myself. We should have been made fun of.
Oh my God, your debating society saga.
If you're hearing this, debating society, get your shit together.
No, but I remember you guys lost. You didn't even qualify the top 10 for 8 years in a row.
Where?
Delhi NCR, top 10.
Oh, where did you study?
At DPS.
DPS. And DPS were killers at debates?
Yeah. We were always top 3.
You were in OG DPS or one of those?
DPS Noida.
DPS.
One of those.
Since when did DPS start chatting shit? What's going on?
I was in my debating society and we were top 3 in NCR during my time. That's all I wanted. Actually not the entire time. Once we were number 7 or something. Yeah.
How much of a role did you play?
Oh, very small.
Really?
I'm not gonna take credit for it. It was I stood for presidency, I lost. So I became the shitty, the editor for like the newspaper. Okay, yeah, no, you can't do debating, you can't do MUN, so just write things. Like, you can't speak, you can't communicate, but you can at least type. So do that. So I ended up doing that, but I was just a member. But the president was actually phenomenal.
Yeah.
One of them, I'm pretty sure he was MUN or debating president. He was now the founding engineer of Green, actually.
Oh, brilliant.
He's now pseudo retired. Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That completely checks out. The maths.
Yeah. So he was debating and math. And he was our debating president. And he was phenomenal. Like, he won, like, international awards for debating. So he literally took our school to, like, next level heights.
That's phenomenal.
So you were not an overachiever in school?
No, I was not. I was like a loser.
So
I was heavily bullied, personally.
Really?
Heavily bullied.
Talk to us a little bit more about that.
I was 97 kilos. Maybe I'm actually being conservative just because I don't want to say the number 100. But maybe I was like between 95 to 105 kilos, and I'm tall.
Right.
Already seen that. So I was not just tall. I'm 5'9". I've been 5'9" since I was 11 years old.
Huh?
That's the reaction I get. So my mom went from being like a, okayish religious person to being a super religious person today, because all she kept praying for every day is, oh my God, don't let my daughter cross 6 feet, because she's going to stay single forever. The conservative Indian mom mentality.
Yeah.
So I was very tall. I was the tallest person in the school, not just the student, not just like, sort of like female teachers, but even taller than most of the men in my school growing up. So heavily bullied for my height, heavily bullied for my weight. And when you're that fat, there are lots of other things that happen in a woman's body, in a girl's body. And that was acne. The amount of acne I grew up with is, please don't ever do that to any other human being again. Really? Oh my God. Yeah, you look great now, honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do.
I was there. I feel you.
Now you have to say that. You just met him.
No, so I actually it's really painful because you would relate to this. Like, imagine having a debate with Guru and you're about to go up on stage and your acne starts bleeding. What do you do? That was the level of acne that I had. So nobody should ever go through that again. It really messes up your self-confidence. So that, and then on top of it all, my father worked in Indian Oil, which is one of the Indian Maharatna companies. And I'm Punjabi. And you can see I have a lot of hair, right? Like a lot of hair. So are you putting the dots together? My mom used to oil my hair every morning.
Okay.
And I used to have extremely oily hair. And my father was in Indian Oil, so you can imagine the kind of jokes that are made. Oh, brand ambassador. Like, you help your parents put food on the table, and then you take the oil from your hair and put it in the food at dinner. Like, stuff. There was one graffiti that to this day I don't understand. Like, I have a picture of it, and I was in 11th, and there was a graffiti in my school about me and about this entire thing, like oil and food and something. Like, to this day, I'm like, these are words put together. They make no sense.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. I've gone through hell in high school. And yeah, of course, I made really like amazing, cool friends along the way, and majority are in the US and in Europe now. Everyone's doing very well, and actually everyone's married, which is interesting.
How does one deal with getting out of being bullied for an extended period of time growing up?
I'm not the best person to answer this question. I was bullied from grade 3rd to 12th.
Oh wow.
Yeah, my father was also very patriarchal and conservative. So my school had a stable, like a horse stable and a swimming pool. So it was mandatory for everyone to choose one of the sports. And as you can imagine, no woman, no girl would choose horse riding because it stings like ass, like really bad. And there were like hardly few guys who would choose that. Majority of people would choose swimming. My father was like, my daughter's never gonna be in a swimsuit, right?
Oh wow.
Ignoring the pictures from Phuket last week, but my like the first time I learned swimming, I was 11. I was very, very old. And that was like my rebellion beginning stage. But before that, I was always horse riding. So when I would go horse riding, I would fall in the mud. And then I would smell, because even after you take a quick shower, you don't have like body wash in school. So you would still, like at some level, it'll take a while for the sting to go again. Combine that with the hairline and the height and the weight. So like I did everything very different from other kids in my school. And I was like the only person who was actually horse riding in my entire batch, which was 500 kids. I was the only person who opted for horse riding, which was bonkers. Spend majority time with my seniors, very, very close, like some of my closest friends are my seniors, because they were very nice. To them, I was the kid, right? So it's a very different dynamic. But yeah, so 3rd to 12th, I was horse riding till 10th. And yeah, then I was also the school topper. So, I mean, that just adds fuel to the fire.
Yep, in school that's a bad thing, which is wild.
So it's a very bad thing.
Yeah.
It's like, you're the opposite of popular. And then I ended up dating the most popular kid as well.
Oh, wow.
So it was...
You had a glow up.
Character arc.
No glow up. No glow up. He's to this day the definition of a sapiosexual. He would never be attracted to somebody for their looks. He would be attracted to somebody for their intellect. And because I had this rule of reading 100 books a year, he was fascinated by that.
100 a year, 3 a day?
100 books a year.
One every 3 days, sorry?
Yeah.
When did this rule start?
I think probably, so I finished my middle school library when I was in primary school. So probably around 1st or 2nd. Yeah. My parents went crazy when they literally got calls from my school teachers that she doesn't attend classes. She is performing well in the exams, but there needs to be a certain amount of discipline and decorum that you need to maintain, that you can't bunk classes. And whenever you find her, she's sitting in this corner in the library and her best friend is the librarian. So this was the complaint my parents would get, and my parents were like, so she's doing well. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, she's doing well academically. And she's in school, she's not drinking, she's not out like playing with friends. Like, she's actually like reading. That's good. So my parents never really kind of berated me for it, but they never let me buy books that were not related to my curriculum. Because they were basically like, if they bought me a book, I would never read my own curriculum. I would just read the book. So that annoyed them to the point that it became a house rule that I was only allowed to buy 3 books on my birthday every year, and throughout the year I was not allowed to buy any other book. So you can imagine the patience and the dedication that I spent deciding which 3 books to buy. And to this day now, after I started making my own money, I have a library at home, obviously.
And what's the genre you gravitate towards?
Obviously
now,
fiction. When you're younger.
Right.
It was all about fiction. My favorite was Famous Five growing up.
Classic.
And I was very, very young. And then it was Secret Seven. And it did me basically all her books. And then, I mean, of course, my OG is Harry Potter. I've read it probably 30 times. The entire series, maybe more than that. There are times when I'm just...
Harry Potter once, or never read Harry Potter once.
Yeah, I just thought that we were going to be friends because of the acne one.
It's okay, we'll bond on other things, don't worry.
No, but Harry Potter, dude, come on. You have to. Don't watch it, it sucks.
I'm waiting for that
Movies
moment.
suck.
I'm waiting for that moment where I find the right person in my life and I'm like, you know what, we should do a movie marathon. Let's watch Harry Potter together.
Okay, no, you found her. Let's watch. It's fine.
I'll make this happen.
Let's actually make this happen. I'm 100% down for any Harry Potter movie marathon, and I'll be quoting the dialogues and you hate me for it.
That's okay.
But you're gonna wear headphones and watch it.
I'm in.
Done.
You heard it here. We're watching Harry Potter together.
They don't care.
I need accountability to the people.
Yeah, it actually does. You have to watch Harry Potter, and it's like the OG. So I've read it so many times, and the last time was probably 6-7 months ago when I read the entire series. And it's because I feel every year when I read it, I learn something new from it. And I mean, J.K. Rowling has just done masterstroke for humanity. Honestly.
That's an understatement.
What are some of your biggest learnings from Harry Potter?
100%. My biggest learnings? True friendship is underrated. True friends are made without any sort of coagulating factor. It's mostly desperation. And it is mostly extremely organic. So if you feel like you have to try to keep or make your friends, and that was a life lesson that I learned last year. And then apart from that, like professionally also, there's just like this entire thing about sort of the way everyone is like, oh, things fall into Harry's lap. That's because he's extremely kind and he knows how to keep the right people around him and make them feel empowered. Did you notice throughout the books, he never takes credit for it?
No, he doesn't.
Right? That is the true sign of a leader. He's a kid. He's a kid who was bullied. So there's a lot of relatability there. But a kid who was bullied heavily and still is a born leader. Like, I mean, Harry Potter to me is no longer a fiction book. It's a non-fiction book. because it teaches you so much about not just the way you should carry yourself personally, but also professionally. It's just, it's my
Also,
favorite
the trust that he puts in everyone.
Yeah, like
Yes.
there's obviously mistakes that he makes, but majority of the mistakes come from naivety more than it comes from bad intent.
Yes.
And there's a lot of stupid things that he does, which is like, going into the unknown and stepping into the darkness when you don't know what resides behind the door or like, down the road. But honestly, maybe, it's like he was Delulu before Delulu was a thing.
Yes.
That's what it is. And I think that more of us need to be like that, because otherwise we are living like risk-averse, conservative, unhappy lives. I'm a former trader. I'll always respect someone who takes risks. So.
You talked a lot about, your conservative upbringing. And I think in one of your podcasts or interviews, you mentioned that kind of changed your outlook on education, in the sense that you weren't really studying for a job or a career. You were studying for the sake of studying and curiosity. And so how has that played like a role in your success now? And does the world have a way of, curbing your curiosity and getting you back to now learning for the sake of something specifically goal-oriented? Or do you still have that intrinsic curiosity?
That's a very, very good question. So I think I said that because I was the kind of person who hated rote learning. So if you speak to anybody from my school, they will tell you that, Ash is a born liar. She's a pathological liar, because she would say that she has not studied for an exam and then she would score 100% in that exam. But that's only because I loved science and I hated humanities growing up. So, no offense if you guys did that and you just gave
Science, commerce.
Okay, so I hated humanities, so thankfully there's nobody from humanities here. And I was like somebody who would have like I would bunk all the other classes, and right before the final exam, 3 days before that, I would call like the number 2 person in my batch and be like, hey, what's this? Like, what all chapters are coming in the exam? And she would just, like humor me. She'd be like, yeah, all of this is coming. And I know that you must have read everything. I'm like, no, I haven't done anything. Perfect. Then I would cut the phone and I would go to my dad and be like, Papa, can we go to the bookstore? I have to buy these 2 books. Because I didn't even have the books. Like, I was literally that person. I hated rote learning. So because when you have like 3-4 subjects that are like that for you, you want to find love in the others. So you try to kind of, do things around like, why did I fall in love with economics? Why I fall in love with economics? That's because I started reading. So we had like this culture at home of reading the newspaper, the full newspaper every Saturday morning. So my father would ask me questions, and majority of it was politics and geographical things, and it was all like humanities related stuff, right? There's no physics or math getting published in newspapers.
Unfortunately.
But the one thing that was published was economics. And the one thing that economics had was pure math.
Yes.
When they were like macroeconomic indicators, if you actually read like those overhead pieces, and there would be like talks about the graphs and the ways that different mathematical models have been used for calculating predictability and probability of certain events. Oh my God, I fell in love with that.
Yeah.
So that's how I actually found the thing that I love the most. And when you find something that you feel like you're getting pulled towards, you automatically try to chase that high in other things. So that's how I fell in love with chemistry. Because acne, research,
Very interesting.
chemistry. I was an India topper of chemistry. And that's because I fell in love when I started reading about how different chemical compounds interact with the skin, interact with each other. That's why, and this narrative that I've always had for like 15, 20 years of growing up, I look for that in founders today. Like when you're solving a problem and you're building a solution, what's propelling you? There's never, I've never seen a company where, and they might exist, no offense to anyone, but I have never seen a successful company that was built from a perspective of, the tech exists, I know how to do it, so I'm going to build this, and it's going to be $100 billion. It always comes from a need and the pain that you have experienced yourself, and how you actually go out in the world looking for a solution, and hey, you didn't find one. So you come back and you're like, this shit, I'm going to build it myself, right? That energy to me is very, very important when I speak to founders today. So I feel it just, the way I learned everything is also still valid today. And to your question, I still feel they're like forces converging me into, hey, no, study more finance, right? Like read more about how the different term sheets work and how anti-dilution kicks in after 3 rounds of funding, etc. Like basically dynamics of my industry. I'm like, that's fine, we can be biased. Right? Like I'm not excited by that. I'm not a technical person at all. I self-learned how to code, and that was only because I was feeling very sort of out of place with everyone else in my industry when I was trying to build something a few years ago. And I'm not like someone who just learns quickly, but I'm not a technical person at all. Yet I have made like so many space tech investments, right? Like yet I'm the kind of person who just put myself into one industry and learn the technicalities and literally speak the technical lingo to the point that, non-tech people say, hey, can you please simplify that for me? And that's the level I've gotten to now, because that's just what I love to do. So yeah, just a rebellion, I think. Born to rebel.
I'm glad you brought up the two interesting points. One, what you look for in founders, and the second, that you have deep knowledge in a bunch of these different technical spaces. So like you work in VC, AI infrastructure, some space stuff, hardware. When there's such a breadth of topics, how much depth do you need in each topic to understand business opportunities and evaluate founders in that space? And the second part is, to be able to do all of this, you need to be really proficient at learning. How do you get really proficient at learning?
I'm going to answer the second part of the question first, because that's more relatable, and honestly, I don't know the answer to the first. I'm going to take that time to think about it.
Okay.
I think it just goes back to the way how I've always educated myself. My parents don't speak English properly. They are not at all fluent. I was also bullied, obviously, in school for not being able to speak English for the longest time. So for me, it's always about trying to kind of figure out why you need to learn something. The minute I nail the why, I'm able to do it. To this day, I've never understood why the fuck we need to learn geography.
How would you?
Never passed geography in school.
Dude, what's the relevance? Like, why do I need to know Atlanta's capital? Like, nobody cares. People living in Atlanta don't know.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's fine if you don't. To this, like, I just don't know. All I know is Pangea. There are 7 continents, and that's pretty much it. Like, that's the geography knowledge that I have. That's why I was never a quizzer. Like, all my teachers were like, you're number 1 in school, you should become a quizzer. I joined the quiz club, quit 5 minutes in. I was like, yeah, not for me. So the why of the subject is very important. Like for physics, for example, physics and theoretical physics, for example, is literally all around you. If you want to understand the universe around you, and I don't mean like the space universe, like literally this entire podcast room. If I want to understand the dynamics of how the light is interacting on your face, and on mine, how is that different? If the light, there's like a crystal lamp here, so how are the two interacting? Like, I wouldn't be able to say anything without physics. Chemistry, acne, done, sorted, right? Math, the bedrock for physics and economics. Like, you need to know math, and math is fun. Like, I'm Indian, dude, I'm brown, so of course I find math fun. So like, the why of subjects needs to be obvious. The minute that happens, I find a way to learn it.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just proficiency, it's learning, it's intent to find the proficiency in learning. Yeah. So I think it all boils down to the intent. Like, I've seen this. There have been companies where the space sounds very exciting, but I've said internally, so the way we work is like any partner can do any sector deal. So even if I don't find something in, let's say, AI infra or like blockchain interesting, I can always send it to somebody in, let's say, payments, and it's, let's say, a blockchain payment company. So I can send it to somebody in payments and be like, hey, if you find an industry, I'm gonna support you, do it. I do. So that's because sometimes I literally look at companies, I meet founders, and they try to excite me, but I don't feel excited. And if at the end of like 4 or 5 meetings when I'm going home, if I don't Google what you're doing, I'm not gonna be interested in what you're doing. It's as simple as that. My intent is there every morning when I wake up. My entire day goal is to find something to learn about. And if a founder is not able to give me that, I won't be interested in sort of, pursuing that further. And I know that comes from a very probably elitist space, but that's also like the sort of, good and bad thing about being on the buy side. We are very wrong. We are wrong more than we are right. But at the same time, it's honestly a position of privilege to be deploying capital, like somebody else's capital into companies. And that's just the way I see it. I've forgotten your first part of the question now.
How much depth do you require in each of these topics to be able to evaluate, to identify the business opportunities and evaluate them?
Yeah, I'm the worst person to ask that question. I was looking at I met a battery a energy transition battery company last summer on a Thursday, I remember. Very fascinated. Did a follow-up with my GP on Friday. And we have like our internal ICs on Monday. So I was like, no, we're going to discuss this company. And we're going to...
GP ICs?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
So I'm a partner at my fund. GPs are above the partners. They are general partners. They basically buy more than us into the fund. They are also more seasoned investors. Most of them have like multiple sort of big successful wins under their belt. They've been VCs for longer. And every single deal needs to ideally have at least one GP involved. They don't need to like support it. They can say, oh, this sucks, but just have like their guidance involved. You can still do it, but like just have them involved. So that's the way we work. And ICs are internal, like sort of, committee meetings, which is investment committee meetings, which are completely internal for us at seed stage, at early stage. And we basically try to do them once a week, sometimes twice a week, and we can move very quickly because of that with the deals that we end up doing. So Monday we had our internal IC, Monday AM. Friday afternoon we did the second meeting with the founder, and by Monday morning I had read the patent. I had read every single company that had existed in the space for 150 years. I had understood the chemistry of how that battery was operating. And when I discussed it for the first time on Monday, my man literally looked at me and said, Ash, when did you get your PhD in energy transition batteries? Like specifically this one niche of when did you get this PhD? Because as of last week, when we met the founder we got introed on Tuesday or Wednesday and did the first meeting on Thursday. At that time, I posted in our internal group that I don't know shit about batteries. If anyone does, please meet this founder. He comes highly rated. I went through the deck. I found it a little interesting. The deck was actually, I've given the feedback to the founder, it was horribly made. So I was not excited by it. But when I met the founder, I was like, blown away. Mm-hmm. So it's just, that's the way it is. Like, I'm not the best person because I'm not supposed to know all of those details about the chemistry of how the battery works. All I had to know was whether this is a business worth building, whether this is a market that's going to grow. Are there strong tailwinds apart from just the regular growth of that market that will just propel it forward? Mm-hmm. Are there sort of things like spikes about the founder that we think that this is the right person to be building this? Mm-hmm. Does the problem really have merit? Does the solution that they're offering to the problem really kind of go the long way? Do you see this being like the next solution in the next 20 years and not just in the next 3 to 5 years? Like, these are the kind of things you need to know, and honestly, you can do this in a day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right? Yes. You don't need 3 days of me continuously reading. I cancelled on Arjun that weekend as well, I remember, when he was visiting London, because I'm like, yeah, I'm busy researching for a deal. He's like, what's the deal? I told him, he's like, when did you start doing batteries? You don't know shit about batteries. What's wrong with you? Right. Yeah, it's I'm not there. And I've been given this in my 360 feedback that we do in our firm as well by pretty much everyone. That I should not waste time going that deep into business, but that's why I love the job. And also it's a double-edged sword. I'm not the best person to answer that question, so please don't heed my advice. Not at all.
I love everything you've said, and I mean there's far too much to dissect. But one of your interviews, you said that your fundamental rule for life is to ask why at least 5 times.
That's my favorite thing.
And you do that all the time. Clearly, you've become incredibly proficient at it. This battery example is perfect. You ventured into the unknown a lot and you've learned to love it. But in that, you also have to identify a hype cycle versus a longer term sustainable adoption curve for a business. And it's not always easy to do that. So when you're in that position, battery example, how do you know that this is a sustainable lasting business that can survive the test of time versus, it was an AI wrapper, it could last maybe a year? Like, how are you identifying those things?
That's again very good. You guys did your research, right? Well, so they are I can give you a very nuanced answer in terms of these are things you look at, and you look at the quality of people that are coming in, the pace at which people are entering an industry, and how much money that industry is making. And one of the metrics that I personally track, which I've never really read anywhere, but I'm sure a lot of VCs track, is revenue of the industry divided by the headcount bracket growth. How much is this
Growth
fraction
per capita.
growing? No. So how much is this fraction revenue per headcount growing quarter on quarter?
That's revenue per capita growing.
So per capita means family.
Okay.
I mean headcount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you say per capita in the economic, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit of a Hitler of economics.
Fair enough.
So per capita, when you talk about per capita, that means per family.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Per head count is a very different metric.
Okay.
So revenue per head count. So if you are a full-time employee, number of FTEs in the denominator for that industry, take AI as a blanket and look at revenue, total revenue growth. Okay. So revenue growth divided by the total headcount of the industry as a fraction, and then growth of this fraction quarter on quarter.
Yes.
So I look at this, and if any industry is showing negative, I'm not interested. That's a hypothetical, right? So that's just like off the top of my head. That's the way I would do it. I don't need to have exact numbers. I can just see, right? Like any investor with their thought can just see. Okay, 20 different companies got funded. 3 months later, the industry is making no extra revenue. That's a fucking hypothetical, right? So it's not something I can give you all of these nuanced answers. Okay, like I can sound very smart. The reality is, if you basically come to me and you say that I'm building this and I feel it's out of one of the sci-fi books, novels, or movies that I read growing up, I'll be excited.
Interesting.
It's that. So this energy battery company, for example, and I think I'm giving them too much attention also now, but what they are trying to do is completely transition the different batteries that exist in the world today. Like the way batteries will be used and invented, manufactured, and then recycled at an individual level, not at an industrial level, not at a business level, will be completely transformative. They are like still pseudo stealth, I can't disclose more, but they have a patent now of what they're trying to achieve. And if the next 3 years go well, they will be like $100 billion company in my opinion. It's like a massive vision, right? They're not a portfolio company, so it's not even like I'm advertising a company right now. But so that's it. To me, felt like 20 years from today, you will basically be on a line bike, which you'll not have to ride. The battery will ride it for you. Right? Exactly. That's what I'm looking for. When I'm in a VC pitch meeting, I want to just completely zone out and be like,
You need that wow factor.
I need that wow factor. And I need my mind to be blown. Like it needs to be like, holy shit, I didn't even think this was possible.
Yeah.
Like if somebody comes tomorrow and invents the lightsaber, I'm like, defense tech, let's do it, right? Like I'm just kidding. But it's just, I grew up loving sci-fi and it's my bread and butter. It's what I've always loved. And if anything from Star Wars, honestly, I'm making like, oh my God, I'm on frontier, right? Like it's, what's the name of the train that Elon is proposing building between New York and London?
Yeah. 54 minutes?
Yeah, 52 minutes, I think.
Unbelievable.
52 minutes and $20 billion, by the way. So it's like hypersonic. Dude, it's Star Wars. Come on. He is a fucking Star Wars. Like, everyone knows this. I'm telling you, these kind of things take my money. I know that it's going to be big. And if somebody is able to dream like that, especially in their first or second venture when they're young, they're high hustle, that person's going to make it. They might pivot completely to something very different, but they want to make it. So that is the way I would honestly describe what I look for. AI rappers would have been very exciting for me in 2018, 2019. Didn't see any, was investing in India at the time. But like honestly, today I need something bigger. Like honestly, Google Willow, if that was a standalone company, I would have cut my wrist off to fucking invest in that business, right? Like it's groundbreaking innovation.
What is Google Willow, just for context? For
so they have basically completely redefined, I'm not going to go into the technical, but they've completely redefined how quantum computing is going to work in the future, and how, for example, the fastest supercomputer in the world, the kind of problems that it would take like 3,000, 4,000, 30,000 fucking years, is now going to be solved in like a couple of minutes, maybe at the most. So that is the competence of this quantum computing, and it's just going to be game changing in the world where computing demands are just going to increase and not reduce in any period of time. And even like what we saw NVIDIA releasing at CES.
Oh, that made me so happy.
There were so many things, right? But honestly, like if any of them were standalone companies, quantum labs, because
Absolutely.
especially what's called the portal thing. I'm forgetting the name for it. It's basically like a 3D configuration. I'm guessing they're using photonic nanotechnology, but I'm not sure. I've not read up on it.
Sure.
Basically, it's a 3D hologram of anything and anyone that you want at any point in time. They released one of the products that he released. There's like a multicolored rainbow demo that he showed as well, like dancing right next to the MacBook. I'm guessing it's a MacBook. I don't know. Dancing right next to a computer. And just kind of, shooting off lights in all directions, etc. Like that's a 3D hologram. I'm guessing it's, sort of photonic nanotechnology that would basically, if we can do this in the virtual world like that. But when I say virtual, it's not like the metaverse. It's virtual in terms of I'm a hologram. I'm sitting at my home doing exactly this, but you can see the 3D reconfiguration of me right here. So stuff like that, that's so cool, isn't it? Like,
very interesting.
Everyone's talking about the supercomputer, but I mean, that's obviously great, but who needs that level of compute at home? I mean, I'd want one. But
I would want one.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone would want one, but like majority of the world doesn't need that much compute at home. Something like that, people anywhere who are like doing long distance calls, they do that. Is my assumption. I don't know. So it's, any of these very wacky ideas, I would follow it. Sorry not to give you a very intelligent nuanced answer.
I like that you brought up compute because I wanted to talk to you about decentralized compute. So I think in, again, one of your interviews, you mentioned decentralized compute and
that was right around the time I lost a deal in decentralized compute. So it was fresh in the mind. And see, I'm talking about battery today, and that's the last deal I lost. So I talk a lot about the deals I lose. I shouldn't do that.
You clearly go on podcasts in very opportune moments.
Yeah. Probably that's what it is. Like I'm free right now. That's how I get on. That's what it is. Because I lost a deal. I want to make myself feel better. So that's how it is.
Yeah, but in that you mentioned that it's theoretically good for security and compliance. And that makes sense because, not one point of failure, there is redundancy, all of those things. And one bad actor can't, like you need consensus. But when it comes to the compute itself, like isn't decentralized compute just inherently significantly slower because of the overhead of all of these things like security, hashing, coordination, redundancy? You also introduce that bottleneck of sending data across and then heterogeneity of hardware across nodes. It's slower. And so how can you compete with a competitor that's centralized?
That's a great question. So I think for me, decentralized compute is not like a competitor to other computers, like not competing with together in any way, shape or form. It is a whole different market where it is about the volume of compute available, where pace doesn't matter that much.
For example?
For example, I don't know, like a lot of data centers, like solar panels, data that solar panels are collecting, they don't need the fastest compute.
Yeah.
They need a huge amount of compute. They need the cheapest compute available in the market. See, so it all like anything where you put in the word decentralization will go back to Vitalik's trilemma, which is decentralization, scalability, and affordability. You'll never achieve. It's like Heisenberg's principle.
Yes.
You can't achieve all three at the same time. You can achieve two. Look for markets that don't. It's so my God, you're such noise. If you look at any market where only two are needed. Like they are obviously like the non-cloud market, majority of the market doesn't need that type of pace. Cloud needs that because it needs to have real-time impact and real-time usage for different users that are using that cloud service. But solar panels, I mean, why are you requiring sort of like immediate compute for solar panel data? You don't need that. You need it like once a week, once a month, once a week, something like that. Decentralized compute works for that. The theoretical models that have been created in decentralized compute as a market today show that unit economics can actually be lower.
That makes sense. I believe that.
But again, it's theoretical. That's the thing. So like some of the biggest, like the most advanced companies in this market today are still not live to the scale, like they've not hit economies of scale to the point that the unit economics will be cheaper. So I'm waiting for that inflection point. The minute that inflection point comes, this market is going to explode. That's just my thesis here. Again, don't have a horse in the race. Still looking for one. So if anyone is building, please hit me up at @Ash Arora and ending with a double A. But I have to do that. It's a very, very exciting market at the same time. What you said about like sort of sending the data and kind of receiving it back, it's theoretically it feels expensive. It's not based on simulation that have been run. It's definitely slower. Like the latency is significantly higher than cloud computing, for example. But at the same time, it's more secure. So think of defense data. Defense data would not need real time, would want cheaper, doesn't care about delays, doesn't care about latency, and most importantly, has higher security. Higher security. Cloud gets hacked like that. I mean, there's like German, Russian, so many different hacking communities that have hacked, like AWS, they've hacked GCP, Azure. Everyone's been hacked at least once. Right. So like, what's to say, okay, I'm sorry, has Ethereum ever been hacked? There are so many hackers in the world that are trying to hack Ethereum. They've hacked bridges to Ethereum.
That's what I was going to say.
That's very common. They've rug-pulled a large number of users using other like sort of players that are like silo operating on Ethereum. Ethereum has never been hacked. Yeah. Because see, that's the level of security that Ethereum has, because that is what distributed ownership and consensus does. So I love the concept of decentralization. It's never going to be real time, because that's where the affordability, scalability, real time trilemma comes in. But at the same time, there are enough markets, in my opinion, but unfortunately, they're all legacy markets, which are harder to sell into, which is why the space has not seen the kind of growth we wanted.
That's exactly what I was curious about as you were saying that is, there's a paradigm shift into decentralization, and it's easy in theory, but it also requires a major mindset shift to especially in technology. Any major shift is, for legacy companies, like you mentioned, always a big concern, right? Affordability, scalability. How do we continue to make the same amount of money? Do we need more resources? So many variables they're thinking about.
I mean, think of it this way, right? The digital internet that we live, breathe, and interact with today has existed for close to 10 years. Majority of the companies that we use today were born in the last 15 to 20. Yet think of the prized startup for the value, which was Uber. When did Uber hit profitability?
Wait, have they hit profitability?
Yeah, okay. They have 2022.
23.
Oh, wow.
Right, like Q2 23. Okay. And imagine what was there 3 years before Uber hit profitability.
They were in $3 billion of losses. Yeah.
More than that. This was COVID, guys.
But they also had $10 billion in cash reserves.
Yeah, but
they were sitting on cash.
6 months. The world stopped. Why did they go from literally trying to kind of hit profitability for 10, 12 years, having COVID in the middle, 6 months, the world has stopped, nobody's taking Uber rides, and then suddenly within 3 years they're profitable. How do you achieve that? You need a very massive paradigm shift for majority of the industries to hit the kind of scale that you want them to. And I believe that's not hit for crypto. So that's why when FTX happened, I was like, fine. I was very happy. Nothing against Sam. I mean,
did you ever meet any of the employees?
Yeah, I knew Sam very well. Nothing against Sam and like Alison and everyone, and Nishad also, poor guy. Everyone else, but it's at that moment in time, I was like, okay, finally, this industry is gonna have its low point. Because whenever you have any industry hit their low point, after lots of hype and lots of traction and lots of growth, you have like a moment of reset.
Yes.
And you have a moment of reset with all the foundation in place. And when you reset with that foundation, you do a 1000x better job of scaling it up. I hope that FTX would be that. Unfortunately, it's not. I was waiting till about 6 months ago to actually confirm, and I thought a lot about this. I remember I locked myself into one room and studied for like 6-7 hours, no phone, and then wrote for like 2 hours, and like after thinking for a couple of hours, and finally came to the conclusion that no, that's not happening. And I'm still predicting a massive fallout. something really significant, paradigm shifting, alterating kind of thing happening, might be within the industry, might be outside the industry, which would result in the industry being impacted. Basically. So I need that. Like, I mean, for example, Uber went through a reset after COVID, but COVID was completely external to Uber.
Yes.
Or like the mobility industry at large. So it could be something like that, but it could be something within the industry as well. Either.
But okay, so in the very long term, you are bullish on crypto.
Oh, 100%. I would never say I'm not bullish. I'm not bullish on cryptocurrencies the way they are today. I'm bullish on cryptography and blockchain.
Okay.
The underlying technology.
Because TCP/IP, which is the bedrock of the internet that we use today, was invented in what, 70s? It took about 20 years for 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. It took about 20 years for World Wide Web to be created on top of it. So I know everyone just hates this line that we're still early, but we are still
very early.
Very early. We've not understood the nuances of the different applications that this industry would have. What does this like? Okay, if you and I are two random people who don't know crypto, how do you? I mean, maybe you. So how do you interact with Ethereum today? You can't. You just can't. It's in like something that is like completely out of reach, out of bounds, let alone tangible. It's not even theoretically possible because you've never interacted with anything like that before. How do you result in massive scale? You can't. So to me, it's like, what is going to be the form factor that will make blockchain accessible? To me, that's a very good question. And whenever I meet a blockchain founder who says, oh, the end user will not even know that they're interacting with blockchain. I'm like, okay, why do you think this is the right form factor? This is the form factor that Web2 has been designed. That, software has been, like Airbnb, Uber, Google, Facebook, all of them have used a certain type of form factor. That's a smartphone, a website, an application. What's that for Ethereum? Ethereum can't be a website where an unknown user can just go and very easily interact. It cannot be an application, not secure enough. It cannot be like a hardware device because that's very difficult to penetrate. So, what's the form factor? I still not received the answer. I've literally asked every single blockchain founder I've ever met.
Do you think that's just because of a lack of information available, or do you think it's because of a lack of understanding of the technology to the extent that it should be understood by the people trying to build?
Not the founders building the industry. I would say at large, at general, the retail users, 100% agree. But for people building in the industry, they have all of this information, they have all of this knowledge. So like, what's preventing us from coming up with a form factor that will make it extremely easy for users to interact with the technology, not with crypto? I mean, Coinbase has already done that. Coinbase is how you interact with cryptocurrencies. How do you interact with blockchain technology? Question mark.
Do you think there'll be a specific industry that's gonna have that impact, which makes it more widely accessible?
Could be an industry, honestly, could come out of ETH R&D in like a year. It could come out of, honestly, CZ could create something. He is, at the end of the day, a genius. So he could create something massive. I don't know. Like, to me, that's a very big question which I have not found the answer to. And a lot of like non-Web3 founders have found a way to take that technology, underlying technology, and use it to solve for a problem that they're facing in, let's say, cross-border finance, decentralized compute. But you're still using the technology to solve existing Web2 problems.
Yes.
How do you use a new form factor to actually use Web3 technologies in their wholesome, full-fashion manner? I've not seen any in the world.
That is a tough question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually never thought about that.
That's my job. I'm a VC. If I'm not asking that question, I'm nervous.
Yeah, because I've always thought about applying Web3 technologies to existing problems and how we can make it more
That's
efficient.
what the industry is doing.
But yeah, that's what the industry is doing.
I'm sorry, did Google do that?
Absolutely not.
Did Facebook do that?
Absolutely not.
So you have to create new things. You can't follow the sort of herd that's already been very successful, but in a very, very different industry. The architecture of HTTPS is very different from Ethereum.
Yes.
The only bridge that you have is Solana, which is Rust.
Yes.
Right? In terms of coding language.
Yes.
But like, apart from that, developers have very minimal overlap, from what I can tell. So if developers have different tech stacks, infrastructure is fundamentally different. Why are we saying the ultimate end result would be identical? We are still saying it will be an application, it will be a website. To me, that seems wrong. I mean, you need a Steve Jobs in crypto. That's what you do.
Yes, you do.
You need somebody who pulls out, like, from the tiny jeans pocket, he pulls it out and says, oh, I've never understood why this pocket was made. And it's for the iPod, right? And then the next time, the bigger pocket has the iPhone. Like, you need, and he didn't go and tell everyone, oh, it's basically, we did this, and this is how many graphic chips we had, and this is how we're doing computer. No, he just said, it's a computer in your pocket. I need that in crypto, where the form factor for every single potential application would be very radically different from what we have already. Otherwise, what are we doing? I mean, that's what AI is doing. That's why I gravitated towards, like, back in the day, it was not AI, it was data analytics and ML. That's why I gravitated towards the industry, because ML had the potential to do that as well. Not so much data analytics, but ML, machine learning, purebred machine learning, can create radical different form factors. So,
I think it still can, and I think it will.
100%. I mean, CES and NVIDIA,
Yes.
like 2 hours, 10 announcements, right? All related to AI, all different form factors. Think about it, it was computer, 3D reconfigurations, all different. It was all different structures. You need that. Have you guys heard of TerraVision?
No.
So TerraVision was, I mean, it's a lawsuit that they lost, but they were like the inventors of Google Maps.
Google Earth.
Google Earth.
Yes, they made a documentary on this.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's basically that company, what did they do? They basically took all the available data in the market and tried to create a different. Their entire idea was that all the data exists in the world. It's not available together in the form of an interactive website where you can go around the earth. You can go and search a certain place today, but you can't see the earth. And you can't zoom in on a certain section of the planet without, I mean, obviously, like, without having, like, NASA level secure private data or like space type private data. So, I mean, it's all about you. It's, that's like the pivotal thing. And that is something I'm very, very upset that the industry has not been able to solve for. And honestly, I'm part of the industry, so it's also on me. I should have solved for it and become a millionaire.
Maybe you will.
Yeah, we're clearly on the road to
I
that.
think a lot about this. Like, honestly, I've been thinking about this for close to 5 years at this point. I don't know.
Let's talk about this, because you've thought about this for 5 years, which is from the age of 23 to 28.
Thanks for
very
age shaming me. But
very incredibly young for everything you've done. And we were talking about this right before you came, which is, it's so impressive and it's also inspiring. We were meeting for the first time, but it's inspiring to see someone doing such phenomenal stuff at the frontier of technology. The 5 years you've thought about this, you're running a massive fund, right? You're investing in some of the best companies in the world that will have a large impact. How does that intersect with, like, where you want to be in the next 15-20 years? Do you see yourself at a certain place, visualize yourself in terms of financials? How are you seeing your future right now based on how you're thinking about life?
That's a very difficult question. And it's one of those that, as a hypocrite, I ask when I'm interviewing people. And I don't have an answer for it myself. So I'm just gonna make it as people. I'll just put this out there. I never think of financials. I come from a very lower middle class family, and my FIRE number, financially independent, retire early number, was 1 star, which is, by the way, $130,000. That was my target.
Good for you.
I hit that in less than a year of working. And after that, honestly, money has not made any difference to me. It's basically a game of putting it somewhere so that it grows more.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. I don't see it as, oh, I'll have like a massive, $500 million yacht if those exist, and buy property in Hamptons, or I don't know. It's just, that's not my end goal in life. It's just not. I like the gamification side of it. That's probably because I used to be a trader, right? So I like the, I can do this and this will make more money, and that's fun for me. But having that money in my bank account, or maybe having Italian marble around me and having lavish cars, it's just not exciting. So financials actually don't play a role as long as I get to keep the money out, which I've already paid plenty of taxes for, even though a lot of people on Twitter have tried to get me investigated multiple times. So apart from that, I think for me, I want to be successful, but my definition of success, and I read this somewhere, I really want to not quote something and not give credit to the author, but I can't remember the person who posted this, which is success is when you wake up in the morning, all excited about how you're going to spend your day and the work you're going to do. But you also are extremely happy at the end of the day coming back to your house, to your family, to your partner, to your kids, whatever. So that dual-ended relationship is the definition of success. And I think I want to be that. But how I'll achieve that, what I'll be doing, I could, say right now, I want to have my own fund in 20 years. And tomorrow become a founder, and you'd be like, oh, she was bullshitting us. Right? Because there are so many different, when you're in your 20s, you shouldn't have all your, answers figured out. I've met, I remember I was interviewing this 20-year-old a couple of years ago, and she gave me, I want to do this by 25, and this by 30, and this by 40, and this by 50, and I'm like, you're going to have a very, very sad time. Because you're basically planning everything, which means what? You're not taking risks. Anybody who doesn't take risks, it's not fun, in my opinion. You need to have, I'm not saying you should be risk-taking about everything. Marry the right person. Please don't take a risk with that. Don't marry if you don't think that is the right person. Be conservative in certain aspects of life. But in terms of what you've been put on this planet to do and to achieve, please take risks for that. Because if you're not, then you're not going to have a fulfilled, purpose-driven, satisfied life. So yeah, I feel at least till the time I'm 30, 35, I will not have an answer. But honestly, my mom says that things change when you have a kid, and I want 3 kids. So my answer might be different in another decade.
You've given us a really good segue to get into the family and the personal things. But before we do that, I do have one more question about crypto. As you said, you spent a good 5 years just thinking about these things, right? And so cryptocurrencies, I'll take Bitcoin for example, because I know a little bit more about that. And I see a lot of Reddit, a lot of just the internet so bullish on it. And I don't fully understand it because I don't think Bitcoin can be the future of money because the supply of it is limited. And so as year over year, as economies grow, as you get more efficient and as your output increases, you can print money. And so, economy grows, and let's say I'm making 100 rupees today, next year I'll make 102, 103, 105, whatever. But if I'm getting paid in Bitcoin, I'm making 100 Bitcoin, next year I'll be fighting for 95 and then 90. And so in a sense, you're rewarding people to hoard. And so that stunts economic growth. And you're kind of incentivizing generational wealth. You know what I mean? Just hoard your money and then eventually 500 years down the line, you can do whatever you want. And so that's not how a world can ever work. And so why are people so bullish on Bitcoin? What is it? Why?
That's a good question. I'm going to answer that with a question.
Okay.
Makes me kind of mad. Why do you think in this day and age, in the last 500 years, think of the city and don't you think generational wealth hoarding has been the primary source of income for hundreds and thousands of years across the world? Think of where your family got money. Think of where India got money when they were started. Everyone has a certain amount of money. A large number of people in sort of developed countries have stolen wealth. That's a fact. And they have hoarded that wealth. For example, I can say this, my landlord, his name is Sir Richard Sutton. He was born in 1710.
Might not have a house to go back to.
Yeah. So my house, my street is 1100 years old.
Okay.
So I live in London. It's a fucking museum, walking museum.
Exactly.
My building, my window is 450 years old. My building, the outside of my building is 450 years old. It's right next to Regent Street, if you guys are familiar with London.
Very.
Yeah, so, and then, Savile Row, where all the first sort of, manufacturers of tailored suits actually sat. They were like actual tailors. And, everyone from the world would travel there and just to kind of get a suit. And it was a thing that you can't get married without a suit, etc. So that street and my street, intersect, right? And my town obviously is like, we renovate it every 10-20 years, but the external is like so old. My landlord has had not just my building, but my entire block. My block from Regent Street, going all the way to Piccadilly Circus, which is an entire block, is owned by one guy.
Wow.
Who was, by the way, I think some sort of I wouldn't say a servant, but like some sort of employee to the royal family back in the day, to Queen Victoria, or maybe before.
Hey, any chance he has a daughter our age?
Yeah, I know, right?
2 daughters preferably.
That's the point. So it's generationally hoarding of wealth that has happened. His successors today are all benefiting from the fact that they did not sell. Their rental yield is still low, but they're still making money by doing it. Right? Now think about hoarding Bitcoin. So that is like the second part of the answer. I'll come with the first one as well. Why do you think hoarding Bitcoin and then staking or like restaking or any of the different things that you can do in DeFi is not a viable way in which you can actually use a medium of exchange, which is Bitcoin?
Because, so this guy might own the block and, he's getting good income from it, whatever. But there is still more money being printed, so there can be a rags to riches story. Whereas in Bitcoin, if I hold it, you cannot have it.
Yeah.
How? So Bitcoin has a maximum supply of 21 million.
Yes.
21 million can be divided into infinitesimally smaller pieces.
Yes.
There can be infinite smaller cells of Bitcoin.
Right.
Yes.
Each cell can be equal to $80,000, which is whatever, like $70,000, which is the value of maybe 85. I don't know where Bitcoin is right now, but somewhere between 80 to 100K. So like whatever that value, every single infinite of those pieces can have that value. Yes. Because that's the law of supply and demand.
Yes.
So my question is, at that time, what would be the value of one Bitcoin?
Yeah.
$3 trillion. That's the point.
Yes.
If you own one Bitcoin today, 500 years from today, it's possible that when it becomes a medium of exchange, when it becomes a store of value, when it qualifies the definition of money, like the economic definition, the financial definition of money, it can become that. Because think of it this way, I describe this as a top-down and bottom-up approach, okay? Bitcoin supply is constrained, it's top-down. It's breaking existing supply into infinite small pieces.
Right.
The way deficit spending and deficit financing happens, which is printing currency, results in inflation happening, it's bottom-up. You print whatever currency you need, and then you kind of coagulate it, and that's how FX pricing is decided. Why is GBP dollar falling? Why is dollar INR falling? Right? These are the kind of sort of things that come up when you've already done that, and when it reaches that top level, and then you're like, holy shit, we printed too much, or we printed too little, whatever. So that's how you actually decide. This is top down. That's what it is. That's why it's like a very difficult to understand concept. But if you think about it, money being printed today is resulting in a lower value of what you own.
Yes.
Right? It's the opposite in Bitcoin.
Yes.
More Bitcoin, infinite smaller pieces of Bitcoin being used in the market today improves the value of what you own. That makes it by definition deflationary.
Yes.
That's why, why did I get so excited about Bitcoin and blockchain? I was fucking 20 when I entered the space. Why was I so fascinated? Because the economist in me was like, this solves all the problems, that inflation and deficit spending and deficit financing and democracies and central banks and the way banks are orchestrated today and mortgages are operating today, interest rates and why interest rates and bonds are always inversely related, right? Like one of the formulas you must have read in your 12th. I mean, you had commerce in your 12th when you did your economics. One of the formulas, interest rate price is like inversely proportional to bond price. Why does that happen? Kept to the fucking deep levels. It happens because that's the way government wants it to happen.
But to be a medium of exchange, you need a lot of regulation. And the government wants things to happen a specific way.
No, you don't. Let's talk about 1,000 years ago when barter exchange was happening. Humanity survived 1,800 years without a bank, without regulation. Why do you think we need regulation?
Do we not need regulation for crypto? For it to be a mass adopted medium of exchange?
I don't think so. I think the minute you bring in regulation, it goes against the incentives of the regulators. Regulators today have complete control, autonomy, visibility of everywhere you're spending your money. They don't want to give that up. Why the hell would they say, okay, no, we're going to regulate crypto, you switch to this and we lose visibility and sort of complete control of what the fuck you're doing? They don't want that. So it goes against the ethos of the way the world has been constructed today. But that's my point. In my opinion, the world is inefficient. It's a 200-year-old story. Imagine when you speak to your grandparents and they tell you, oh, this is how we raise kids. This is all what we're supposed to do. Dude, that's 80 years ago. We are using banking infrastructure of the last 250 years. When's the time that we're going to innovate and upgrade this shit? Like, to me, Bitcoin and crypto are literally the only way in which you can actually do that. All of fintech, to me, is payment services. It's not innovative financial services. It's not. And I've literally said this on Twitter. I said this to Patrick Collison also when I met him. Love Stripe, you guys haven't innovated anything apart from creating an easier medium for businesses to interact. Exactly. It's efficiency. Friction. Exactly. It's a frictionless, efficient way in which you have innovated the existing payment infrastructure. So you've not innovated the payment infrastructure. You get it? So like, to me, who's innovating the payment infra? Blockchain is the only technology that exists in the market today that can do that.
So you're looking for disruption through blockchain at the intersection of cryptography and all the technology associated with that.
It doesn't have to be blockchain. If you find something else, great. It's just that's the only thing that exists right now.
To me, there is a 250-year-old legacy banking infrastructure where central banks can bail out any bank that goes under. How do they bail out? Deficit financing. What does deficit financing do? The three of us, the money that we have, value goes down. How is that okay? You know why that's okay? Because everyone has a job. Everyone is earning more money. Imagine if everyone in the world was unemployed. Everyone was given $1 billion at birth. You were like, hey, oh my God, like, Sir Richard's daughter, she's a billionaire, I'm very sure, whoever she is, if there is actually a daughter. But like, but yeah, so like, she had $1 billion at birth. Yeah. I can guarantee you the money that she has today is lesser than what she had at birth. They are not working. I know where they are chilling. They're always chilling at some island. Their entire family. Yeah. So like, what's the value? What's the value of what they hold today 1,000 years from today? To me, they are bankrupt and bankrupt.
Well, in a sense though, isn't that good that like that's meritocracy at some level, right? Like you have to work.
How is it meritocracy if you're born?
No. In the sense that it's like money right now is inflationary, so whatever they're born with, if they don't do anything about it, it'll decrease in value.
100%. That's good. Yeah, that's great for someone who's inherited that amount of money. But think of it this way, like I said, if 8 billion people on the planet were given $1 billion at birth.
Okay. Yeah, but then the ones who are working hard and creating value.
There are no jobs. Where are they working at? There are no jobs.
But is that the world you want to live in?
Exactly. It's not.
Okay.
That's the point, because...
So then there's a segregation between the idealism and the realism here, right? That's simply not going to happen. So
it can.
We can't associate life to it being that.
It's debatable, because to me, you can have massive retail adoption of crypto happening sooner than expected. And if and when that happens, that's exactly this, because all of the money that every single crypto holder has is deflationary.
But this is a concept that, so we live in India, right? This is a concept that I think a large population here will struggle to understand. Take the help at my house. She's opened a bank account like 30 years into her life. She struggled. She came to us. She said, how do I open a bank account? Just that adoption, something so legacy was hard for her. So when you're trying to adopt crypto, for us, sure, we have access to the information, we have access to the resources.
That's the thing. But at the same time, the way banking infrastructure got adopted by everyone was because the government was like, this is how things work. You were informed. Everyone was informed. Bank accounts, interest rates, mortgages, EMI, etc. To me, it requires a complete, sadly, collapse.
Interesting.
Of a large number of things. SVB was one of them.
SVB?
Silicon Valley Bank. That crashed last year.
Right.
In the Bay Area was an example. 2007-8 financial crisis was an example. The idea is that you basically come up with a solution that lasts longer and doesn't have these kind of, even theoretically, these kind of problems. Mm-hmm. Today, like the financial markets today also have fundamental issues. Okay. Right? Like I used to be at Citi. I'm not going to talk about like big banks and all, because the compliance department, I know that. That's happened before. When
I hope they watch our podcast, honestly.
But it's one of those things where, to me, the way legacy banking infrastructure works today, not just for payments or transactions or remittances, but also like corporate banking and everything else, like bank deposits, retail investor holding, etc. Everything is completely broken. There is a huge amount of trust that is involved, and that trust is misplaced. It's completely misplaced. The amount of fraud that we see every now and then in banks that are not even public.
Yeah.
There's fraud that happens internally and it's covered up.
Have you heard about the Wells Fargo frauds?
Oh, I mean,
Wells Fargo is massive in America, but
the number of accounts they opened.
internally.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. I couldn't agree with you more.
Daily or monthly or whatever targets, like, it was
So
ridiculous.
that's what I fundamentally believe that banking needs to be transparent. See, money is a very, at least for like someone who had the kind of upbringing I did, money is a very emotional and sentimental thing.
Okay.
Right? For majority of the people in the world. Like the top 2-5% might not feel it, but the bottom 95% guarantees has an emotional sense when it comes to money. There are people in the world who keep money in them under their mattress, right? Like these are memes and jokes because they are there for a reason, because people don't trust banks, they don't trust ATMs. And banks go under all the time, and banks have to be bailed out. So like this infrastructure where we print more money, banks can do whatever the hell they want, and we'll bail out the bank by printing more money, but all of this is resulting in lower value for the money that people already have. And if in a world where people were unemployed, why are there so many, honestly, for the last couple of weeks, why are there so many racist comments against Indians on Twitter? Right?
Because we're smart as fuck.
We do run the GDP of the United States of America.
Yeah, I mean, sort of the meritocracy aside, think about the why.
Yes.
If you are, one of the people who's being racist towards Indians today, put yourself in their shoes. Mm-hmm. They have seen their sort of, their surroundings change. They have seen a large number of reasons where they have not gotten the jobs and somebody else has. For meritocratic reasons, mind you, but I mean, they haven't got the job. They have been relying on their own education infrastructure. They've not been able to kind of, get ahead from that, and they feel they're worse off from their previous generations. And to top it all off, since COVID, everything is more expensive. Mm-hmm. Now, imagine a world where inflation did not exist. Right? You would basically have people who would not feel this pain. This emotional reaction that comes out will not exist, in my opinion, especially in an environment that's deflationary. That basically says if you earned money, if your predecessors earned money, you will automatically be better off. This notion doesn't exist in the world today, and that's never existed in the world today. And by the way, that's never existed since regulation and banking infrastructure came into the picture. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, gold values would always appreciate. Mm-hmm. And gold was the main medium of exchange in the barter system, right? The gold standard in the 1960s we can go into like the history of economics and finance, but at the end of the day, like to me, I don't see any other solution apart from not necessarily Bitcoin, could be any cryptocurrency, but Bitcoin seems to be 51% adopted out of all cryptocurrencies. So probably that.
Mm-hmm. Your explanation of the top-down, bottom-up, and then of course like the explanation that followed, but honestly, thank you for that, because I, for the past, ever since we decided you come on the board, I've thought about this, not actively full-time, two things, but it's been on my mind, and I couldn't come up with any explanation as to how it would work. But that top-down, bottom-up, that did it. That was beautiful. So thank you for that.
I love your passion and excitement for it.
I love this.
Thought.
I love this. That's what 5 times why. That's the secret sauce.
What are the 5 words?
Just ask why.
Anything. Like her theory is, no matter what, ask why 5 times. Why will this be impactful? Why are you doing it? Find a way to get to the depth of it. I wanna use what you just said to segue into. You said money had a very sentimental and emotional value in your family, and growing up as an Indian, I think naturally you're rooted a lot in that growing up with family. Same for me. It has, you learn the value of money, I think, in very different ways, but in Indian families, it's always an interesting dichotomy because there's a wide spread of classes as well, right? Learning it so differently.
We're so classes.
We truly are. And I wanna understand a little bit more about why it held so much emotional and sentimental value, and kind of how you learned to maybe appreciate money more or value money and build that relationship coming from the background that you did. According to Forbes, you grew up in the Delhi slums, which is still...
I hate the word slum. I have no idea why they added it. It's so if you know Lajpat Nagar in Delhi.
Of course.
So right next to it and before Ashram, which is the Delhi Noida border now, there's a place called Nehru Nagar.
Right.
Which was a refugee colony, not a slum, a refugee colony. For people who were coming from Multan, which is now part of Punjab of Pakistan. Right. So both my sides of geography. Geography. This is where it is. I still don't know the capital of like Multan or Punjab in Pakistan. I have no idea. Recently I said Punjab's capital is Amritsar and my family was in stitches. Given that I'm Punjabi, I should know this. So they... no, it's a Chandigarh. Yeah, it's the capital of, funnily enough, both Punjab and Haryana.
Exactly.
Because it's...
Union territory.
Right?
Yeah.
I looked it up. I think it's been a while, but I looked it up. Yeah. It's interesting. But don't quote me on this. I'm not sure. But yeah, so they moved from Multan to Delhi, and at that time it was like, call out to all Hindus, please come to the capital.
Right.
So my grandfather, and as all typical Indian middle class parents, my father says, we had a huge amount of gold that we buried in the whatever ground, and then we came here and we never went back to fetch it. And all my friends have heard the same exact story, by the way. All my cousins have heard the same exact story. And we have constantly looked up news alerts for like Multan and finding a huge amount of gold and everyone becoming billionaires, and none of that happened. Okay, so like I think it's completely fictional, but my father, who's 66 now, will die on this hill that we had a huge amount of gold and we buried it under the land. And they moved here completely broke. Not a single sort of, because there were like a lot of raids, etc. happening. So like people could be murdered if you were wearing jewelry. So nothing, not just a couple of clothes on their back, and they walked all the way and they came out. So there's a refugee colony called Nehru Nagar, which was given, and then there's a refugee colony in West Delhi, North Delhi. So my mom's parents went to North Delhi, my father's parents went to South Delhi. So that's how it happened. So both of them, technically, refugee colonies. Unfortunately, I think Forbes cannot really differentiate between them. I'm like, you need to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And like, honestly, any part of the world that has gone through such punishment. But so for me, my paternal grandfather was a vegetable vendor, and my maternal grandfather was a spices vendor. Is that a thing?
Probably.
Masala. I don't know what the English... I don't know. I think the English language doesn't have a term for this because they don't have spices.
Yeah, they don't understand the concept of
spices.
Okay, you're Indian, stay rooted. We.
Yeah, no, I was saying the English don't have a word for it, and you're like, no, we.
Come on, bro.
When we say spices.
Yeah, so like spices vendor, yeah. So
I'm so confused. Like, what's going on?
So he was a spices vendor, and so like both my grandparents were very, very sexually active. They had 7-8 kids each. 7, something like that. That's a lot. Like, imagine being broke, having housewives, and only doing like vegetable and spices businesses and having like 7-8 kids.
I never thought that being so sexually active would be a problem.
No, it is.
So many mouths to feed.
That's so many mouths to feed. So many sort of kids to send to school. Like having a house that has space. Like the house that we had, the refugee colony in Nehru Nagar, we still have it. It's been in my family since my father moved from Pakistan. So it's been like 70, 80 years since we've had that house. And I was born and raised in that house as well. Like not just my father was born and raised there. All his siblings were born and raised there. I was, my brother, me, everyone. And the thing is, like that house has 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. And we struggled. The 4 of us, me, my brother, my parents, we struggled living in that kind of a house, small house. And then you think, holy holy shit, my father had 7 siblings. So like it was 8 of them and the parents in that tiny house. Bonkers. So my father to this day, for example, when we go for like weddings or whatever, he feels very weird when he's given a room. He's so used to the idea whenever he travels, you have to sleep on the floor. Because the first time he stepped into a hotel room was when I took him to a hotel room.
Wow.
He had never been to a hotel room before. Right? So like it's a very, very different upbringing, very different mentality with which I should live life. And every single, like my father would, sort of, he's like one of those people who would turn off the car the minute you see the red light. Oh, because of inertia, the car will be like, he's that kind of a person, just trying to save that one extra rupee of petrol. So when you're raised in that mentality, there's like this love-hate relationship that you have, which is you feel you were deprived because my father was at the end of the day educated, also did like undergrad and masters, very shitty, like unknown universities and like correspondence, not really full time, but ended up getting a good job and had the opportunity to be a part of the ministry and did not take it because he didn't want to corrupt his soul. So that's where all my ethical tax-paying genes also come from. My father received like this, his proudest moment of his professional journey, which is to this day very hilarious to me and my family, is him receiving a silver certificate from the government of India for being one of the highest tax-paying residents. Highest and consistent tax-paying residents of India. To my father, that's like the...
What a badge of honor.
Exactly, that's a badge of honor. That's like the best thing he's done professionally. So like, it's a very, very different mindset when you're raised with that upbringing. And like every single money that you have, that you earn, it strikes value. Like I would never want to kind of be this person who doesn't have value. I don't think I can ever be that person. If my kids are, I'll like send them to live with my parents.
Yeah, exactly. You learn the ropes and come back
exactly,
to me.
Yeah. Then you'll appreciate what I do. So,
How has your relationship with your parents changed over time?
Extremely close.
Also, real quick, I will every now and then I'll go back but I need to make sure no one's coming in. But
I think growing up had a great relationship till I was probably a preteen. And then at the end of the day, they sent me to DPS, which was the best decision. So I became a very big rebellious teenager. So I rebelled ages 11 to 23.
Right. Roughly. What kind of rebellious?
Oh, name it, honestly. I would leave the house and go out with my friends at like, so I didn't have a lot of friends, I had like 4 friends in total. And a lot of senior friends. I would leave with them at age 15 and just not come back and what am I doing? They're all drinking, getting high, having weed, whatever. It's called smoking. Yeah, I don't even know that. And I would literally take a book with me and sit in the corner and read. Why? Because I just wanted to rebel to piss them off. Not to kind of rebel because I wanted. All I wanted to do was read my books.
Why?
I don't know.
What was that drive?
I did it because I still kind of rebel at some level.
I think we all do, frankly, but it's like, what's the drive to do that? Why do you want to be rebellious?
See, because my parents could have given us a much better quality of life and they chose not to. Like they chose to have me and my brother struggle. Right? Like they actively, like how most parents are like, no, we want to give our children everything. Right? My parents were the opposite.
Do you think that's what you were?
Honestly, now, yes, 100%. I now quote Jensen Huang. I hope suffering happens, exhibiting. But it's, when you're at that age where you feel, oh, wait, you can pay my school fees, but you can't give me 200 rupees to go and see a movie with my friends. Right? Because then my mom would say, no, we don't have money. There would be a school trip, which would be 4,000 rupees over a period of 4 days. I remember that Agra trip also, I was not allowed to go with my friends. I was in grade 8. And my parents were like, no, we don't have the money. I speak partly, I won't call it fluent, but I speak French a little bit. And I studied it from ages 3rd to 12th in my school. And there was a French exchange. And the toppers were selected, like people who are fluent in French. And at that time, because I was practicing, I was absolutely fluent. And obviously, I was selected. There were 5 people selected across DPSs, not just from my school, like across DPSs. And then that list was extended to 25 because there were a lot of French people interested in coming to Delhi. And yeah, my parents were like, yeah, because they were like, our home is not pretty. My home was very shitty to look at growing up. We had like outdoor, cane furniture that you put outside in your balconies. That was our living room furniture. Like my entire life. We changed it when my brother bought a new couch when he was moving and was trying to kind of buy his own house, etc. So, that's when we upgraded the furniture. So it was a very deprived upbringing. And when you reach that age when hormones are all over the place, the first people you want to hate for your quality of life are your parents. And for me, it was higher because I could see that we had the money. Because once my father let me see his payslip, because I was good with numbers and I would file our tax returns every year. So I was like, bro, give me some money. Why are you doing this to me? So I think at that time it was not a conscious connection that, oh, you deprived me, so I'm going to rebel.
Yeah.
It was more like, I hate you. I don't know why, I just hate you. So it was that rebellion that started. I remember this one incident that happened at age 11, and my mom and my relationship was extremely rocky because my father used to travel for work and he was living between Gujarat and Delhi and Calcutta and sort of other parts of the country. And my mom and I were alone at home because my brother was off at college. He's elder than me. So my mom and my relationship was extremely rocky till age 23. And that's when I was living between Bombay and Singapore, and I used to come back very often, but not every day. And that's when we started to mend it. It was not an active thing, oh, I'm sorry, I did all of this, let's mend this, let's fix this. But we just became so close now to the point
that's such a fascinating journey because you had to suffer in your own environment in some capacity to now be at a stage where you told us your mom is your best friend, right? And it reminds me of a quote. The limiting beliefs in our life are only those that our mind acknowledge. But oftentimes, my mom always says this to me. She says that your limiting beliefs come from your own home, from your own family, from the people closest to you. And I don't know if in your case it was limiting beliefs per se, but there was so much struggle and understanding that there was more than was seen at the surface, right?
I think it's also because, my parents are very rich. As you can imagine, when you come from that strata of society. My father's goal for me was to become a school teacher. So that was the end achievement that I could achieve in his mind. And my mom's was HR because she wanted me in a professional setting because she used to seeing all of these women professional top dressed and going and achieving things in the world, etc. So HR. Why? Because HR gets home by 5-6 p.m. No. And
that was such a Twitter post.
And both my parents were very supportive of me taking medicine, but I wanted to be a neurosurgeon when I was younger, before I fell in love with economics. And then I looked up that in India to become a neurosurgeon, you have to study for 14 years after high school. And I was majority of high school ACADS, I hated, right? Because I was doing well, but that's because I liked to learn, but not because I was loving the subject matter. I was I can't even study. Because I want to do things in the world, right? 14 years shackled to books, that doesn't make sense. My best years. So I decided not to. And if not that, then HR or school teacher was my place. Because even if I became, took medicine, in their mind, they were no, we manipulate her into becoming a dermatologist or, a pediatrician, somebody who works fixed hours. That was their end goal. That no, her main purpose for existence is to have kids, is to get married. My father had this thing that he wanted me to get married before he retired. He retired 5 years ago. That's what I got this are you kidding me? I wouldn't have gotten married before 23. He tried very hard and I left home. That's when the rebellion started to end because when he retired, I started seeing their side. We very often when LGBTQ people come out to their parents, we very often expect parents to just accept. I understand the parents side of it. I'm very supportive of the community, but at the same time, I understand that they have been raised in an environment with a certain set of values. You can't expect them to change overnight. All the success that they wanted from their kids was my brother's financial success and meritocratic academic success, and their daughters marrying a really nice guy, from not a rich family, but like a nice family, like us, that she doesn't feel like imposter syndrome and just having kids, like 2-3 kids before the age of 30 and, living like this quintessential perfect suburban life in Delhi. That was their goal for me. But it's not me. It was never me. And the limiting beliefs piece that you just said, that's exactly what I had. And now that I'm friends with my parents, they are so proud of me. Like my father, when he saw my first interview, I think it was 22, 23, he had tears in his eyes. He said that I couldn't believe one of my children can speak fluent English. That was his reaction. I'm like, bro. It was a fucking 1.5 hour long interview. And he goes, oh my God, I can't believe. He came and put his head on my head, his hand on my head and goes, oh my God, I'm so emotional. And he was giving me his Ash Arora and all of that. And he's like, after the lessons, he's like, I can't believe you speak fluent English. I'm like, bro, not the badge of honor I'm looking for. But yeah, so I mean, it was limiting, but now we are friends because now they're very happy about success and they keep rooting for me. Like they are now in my corner cheerleading with pom-poms on. They're like, yeah, go do this, go do that. And why are you here? Just go do this. Like, what's stopping you? Now they've become like this set of parents who, give them time. Parents change. Parents do. And anyone. People just need to be given the right amount of time if their heart is in the right place.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful message. Do you think that the depth of relationship you have now with your parents, do you think depth in relationship, any relationship, that level of depth can be achieved without having some sort of a rocky period in that relationship?
I actually do. So I think it goes back to the COVID word.
Mm-hmm.
Either you can have rockiness within the industry, i.e. within the relationship, or you can have rockiness outside that helps you as individuals grow together. So there are two types of successful relationships. Don't just think like parent-children, think of two partners, like a boy and a girl. Either they go through hell together,
Yes.
right? And they come back and they're strong together. I've at least personally noticed a lot of people who break up, remain friends, and then patch up, end up having really good relationships. Both of you are grinning. I'm hoping I'm not touching on something very personal. That's not my story.
This is when the camera's shut.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
And then on the other side, it is when two people grow together. You must have seen at least one example of some high school couples who are still together or some undergrad couples who are still together and they want to be together till they're 90, right? Because they grew as individuals but together. So they didn't let the rockiness come in between the relationship. They kept the rockiness to themselves and they grew. And they were lucky that they were able to kind of grow at the same pace at the same time. Which is honestly rare because that requires a large number of common denominators in your upbringing, family, lifestyle, life experience, all of that. So I feel the more the world gets more diverse, the less we'll see of this and the more we'll see of the problem. And that's what we've been observing, by the way, in paradigm shift of relationships. Formal meaning where you basically have a lot of rockiness in your relationship and then you kind of take time apart to figure it out and come back. Because if you think back 50 years ago, a large number of relationships were we'll grow together.
Right.
A large number of successful relationships today are rockiness.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
that's what I want to touch upon.
Yeah. It's evolution. It's actually fun. I feel it's good because the world is getting more diverse, it's getting more open, it's getting more tolerant, it's getting to a point where you don't have homogeneity in everything, which is what you have.
It's fun. It's interesting.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's challenging,
Yes.
right? It's not easy. It's not for it's not for beginners, basically. And people like that are very far and few now, mostly in suburban cultures across the world. But in the cities, you see rarely something like that where people go together. You have to have, some sort of a trauma.
But don't you feel like now, he said the world was a lot simpler back then. Now with the evolution, you're living a real life, but then everyone is living a very, very sophisticated digital life. And in relationships specifically, I think that leads to a set of insecurities that you can never quite express or voice. Because you can't truly know the depth of someone's digital life or their former digital life, right? I meet someone in 2 years will I truly know that person and dissect their last 5-10 years? Maybe their real life, yes, but they've lived an entirely parallel universe, which I'll never know. And I think there's pieces to that where I'll always have a small semblance of like an insecurity, which hopefully does not foster into like a bad relationship, because I can deal with the insecurity, that marginal insecurity is there. But is it impacting more people than we think, and how?
Do you think it's stemming from like fundamental trust issues that are around in our society today? Because think of it this way: back then there was no digital life, but at the same time there were other parallel universes. Like you heard so many stories of having a family on the wrong side of that, right? A large number of people like that. I think there are ways to hide things, but it all comes back to character and trust.
Absolutely.
So to me, I mean, I've seen couples and it's very corny, and I made a lot of fun of the girl for this as well. She and her partner got married in real life. They were 23. Just to me, it's like child marriage. In my mind,
Absolutely. We feel the same way.
23 they were married, 25 they had kids.
Bro.
Like, whoa.
Imagine us having kids, right?
Imagine, right? Like I'm a kid, like no.
My kid would be in an adoption center.
Oh my god, the kids would be so traumatized. More than the previous generations combined. No, but they got married at 23. They got remarried at 33.
Same.
Oh.
They were married. Very happy.
Married kids, divorced.
Kids, no divorce.
Oh, just renewed their vows.
Renewed their vows, but to them it's like every 10 years we need to get married. Okay. During this 10-year period also, they got married in every single multiplayer video.
Like Sims kind of vibe.
Sims kind of vibe. Sims, I don't know, CSU, I don't know if you can get married. Like every multiplayer video game where you can get married, they got married.
That's
exactly. That is the level of love and innocence people can share. Now a couple like that, dude, they're like, I literally asked her. No, it's sweet, right? It's so funny, but it's like, honestly, it's aspiration. Obviously, I've made fun of them for a decade at this point. They are my high school seniors, both of them, and I will continue to do so. So if you're looking, it's not ending. But it's one of those things where it's aspiration.
Yeah.
We are looking for that one person in life, all of us deep down, that we can trust completely. So to your point, you're looking for that one person you can trust to the point that they will tell you everything about their digital personas and what's to come as well, their deepest, darkest secrets. And like what I have experienced in my relationships is there's a huge amount of darkness and a lot of depth to most people that they themselves are not aware of. So if you find someone who's self-aware, like really, really self-aware, I'm an exception, I'm a decade into therapy, so like it's a very, very different world out here. But be somebody who you think you can actually 100% trust the character of. Not just like trust them, but trust the character. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what that is.
Do you think there's a single person for everybody in this world?
I'm a romantic, I grew up reading.
Are you a hopeless romantic? Are you a Cancer?
No, I'm not a Cancer.
Oh, don't bring this astrology bullshit.
No, I bring it up as well. Everyone asks me, oh, come on. I ask.
I mean, I'm a Cancer and I'm a hopeless romantic.
No, I'm an Aquarian. I'm comfortable. Second planet.
Sixth.
Oh, nice.
But he's not a hopeless romantic.
Oh, that's sad.
Bullshit.
Deep down. Yeah. Deep down, he'd be like me. He would have like this persona where he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna take, I don't suffer fools and I don't take bullshit. But the minute, exactly, and then the minute you're like, you just want to be softy or make baby noises, like.
Look at how astrology is playing a role in your life now, man.
Nothing to do with it. Wait, you believe in astrology?
I never used to, and 2 years ago it just changed my life. Like something really big happened in my personal life, and like it was not directly impacting me but my family.
Can we talk about
No,
it?
it's a little too fast.
Afford or
But-
no afford also?
Sorry, what?
Afford or no afford also?
What do you mean?
Afford, like afford.
Yeah, we can talk about all this. Yeah. All podcast. Look at you, James.
Says the one who said ratioed like an hour ago.
Come on, yeah, but like
I knew what ratio was, but in the context.
In the context,
I was so really podcast ratio us. She's not posting anything. What's going on? Like,
I was not on board.
see, I didn't ratio you. I just let you.
You can't.
Because you didn't. Oh, come. My followers would disagree. I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure a large number of people. I'm pretty sure like, oh my god, multi-billion company CEOs. Oh my god.
You also called out Brian Johnson.
Yeah, let's.
And he responded.
But that's recent, dude. Like, name pretty much all. I've done this with all. I love it. Yeah, dude. Okay, I loved Brian Johnson's new documentary.
Yeah.
And it made me want to kind of live that kind of life. But the more I kind of extrapolated that into like the world and how the world would react if this was to actually happen, like longevity to the point that you don't die, because that's what the documentary is called. It just creates a very bleak like environment. So to me, that's like, I had to call him out on that. Come on.
I
I
mean,
think death is what gives us purpose, and without that, we wouldn't really do
Yes and no. That's what like a large number of people believe, and I used to have like very similar sort of thought process as well. But at the same time, I think purpose can be intrinsic as well as external, right?
Okay.
So death to me, I think to most individuals today is external. You know why? Because we have not experienced death. We have not died.
Wow.
But even parts of us, it's not like, certain animals, there are organs that die over a period of time. Yeah, there are lots of like sea animals where like a certain part of organ would die and, they would regrow that, and like starfish, for example. Like,
they regrow that.
so like, all of that happens. But they have experienced some proportion of death. As humans, we don't do that. We just age.
so do you think that we derive our purpose based on other people's death and the stories that they've lived?
Why do you think social media is so wide?
Why do you think social media
is so wide?
Because
people are looking for external validation, and this level of external sort of picture of what their lives really are, as opposed to what internally they believe their lives are.
Right.
So I believe that yes, majority of like purpose comes from death, like why we do something fundamental. A lot of it also comes from intrinsic purpose. If you have money, like I should just wake up and do something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And a lot of people would say, oh, they work because they have to, but that's not purpose.
Right.
Majority of people in this world, in my opinion, don't have purpose.
Absolutely. But how do you identify purpose? Like where was that?
Bullshit you so much.
That's what, right? Where was that turning point for you where you started to identify purpose in your life? Because you've had a stellar journey, but I'm sure there was a lot of downfalls in that journey as well for you,
many.
right?
I have more failures than successes. I believe people need to really significantly fail in life to actually have meaningful purpose.
Talk to us more about that.
It's one of those things where I tried to kind of learn coding about 8 times. For a normal coder, you just learn it at uni. I didn't have that. So it was very, very hard back in the day. But back in the day, like you didn't have the kind of resources you do today.
Yes.
So it was very difficult to learn coding. And I tried for months and I would give up. I would try for months. I have this one diary. It's called my coding journey. I started writing in it when I was 13. And in my mind, I was gonna be like, sort of, very, very like one of those genius minds and like beautiful mind. I'd just seen the movie and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be like that. Like, not at all. I was completely no. I'm not like high IQ at all. I had to like, if you look at the dates, it has dates spanning 15 years.
Did you say you're not high IQ?
I'm not high IQ.
But that's also because you believe in Howard Gardner's intelligence theory. And he doesn't focus on high IQ.
You stalk me on Twitter too much.
Yeah, I had to, duh. But it was, I read the entire theory after that, and I also entirely believe in the message that he's trying to send with the theory, that there are different kinds of intelligence in the world.
I believe there are like a few generational minds in every generation. A few is not 500, it's 10 per generation in the world.
And a generational mind consists of, for you?
Paradigm shifting capabilities to solve the biggest problems of humanity. So not just like an aptitude test that you can score 170 on. And I'm coming from a place where, oh God, I shouldn't mention all this is awful. But I know a lot of people who are exceptionally high IQ by like every sort of measure in the world. And I'm myself part of Mensa. And there's like a subsection of Mensa called Prometheus, which is top 0.1% of Mensa. I'm part of that as well. But I fundamentally believe very few people, like I think there's like 2 people across the world in Prometheus. We are like total, I think 5,000 people. I think there are 2 people that are actually high IQ generation wise. To me, everyone else is like,
Still Omar can handle everything.
Yeah.
And tell you got to let everyone in.
Yeah.
It's the pyramid theory. That's what it is. And I believe I'm not like, I'm like somewhere middling, like just swimming around really, really exceptional people who are like a mix of high IQ and EQ, but not necessarily. I consider myself high EQ.
How
and I also think
important is?
there's like a total sum of the two.
That's good.
I have one last question about this. Is you've surrounded yourself with exceptional people through your trading days to now. How much influence has that had on your life, and how much impact do you think that holds in an individual's journey, especially in the early 20s?
Yeah, see, the saying goes, there's some average of 5 close people. I kind of believe it, depending upon how much time you spend. I think it's not the sum average of 5 people. It's about 80% of your awake time. What do you do? How do you spend it? To me, that's like the major weightage. If you say I spend it with 5 people, then you're going to be the average sum of 5 people. I spend a lot of my time on Twitter.
Right.
Showing CEOs.
Yeah.
No, that's not my specialty. Please don't get offended.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, I think it's to me, I spend a lot of my time learning.
Yeah.
And that always made me somewhat of a hermit growing up. And that's not the healthy way to look at it.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I'm an extrovert, but I'm a little bit of an introvert. Most days, I'm like a hyper energy, talkative introvert. That's why I'm not the definition of. I don't necessarily. I think there's like a curve in my mind where the marginal utility for socializing is negative beyond a certain line.
Absolutely. There's a law of diminishing returns there.
Exactly.
I couldn't agree more.
And for me, that's not the definition of an extrovert. An extrovert always gets more energy by being social. So that's why
You're more of an ambivert?
I'm more of an ambivert, probably. Definitely not an extrovert, but definitely not an introvert. I've been talking for the last 2 hours. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Interesting. I love that. 2 questions. One, if you had a piece of advice for aspiring founders and aspiring investors, what would that be? And to end it, if you had a piece of advice for anyone in their 20s, what would that be?
But I want to give one advice to all 3. But I'm gonna
That's even better.
keep it for the end, and I'm gonna give like individual specific ones as well, so it's a little bit more curated. For founders, a lot of people will tell you don't go into the hype of building something. I fundamentally am a very big contrarian in that, because I feel the earlier you have the self-confidence, the capability, and the vision to build anything, it could be a copy of Facebook or Google for that matter, doesn't matter. Even if it fails, it creates this bedrock foundation that will help you compound over a period of time and be successful irrespective. You may or may not become like the $100 billion, $1 trillion founder or $5 trillion founder, and given where the markets are going. But it creates like this fundamental foundation that will serve you very well for life, way more than any other industry, any other profession can.
So sense of urgency.
Sense of urgency, sense of hustle, the capabilities to kind of build, and it could be tech, non-tech, ideally tech, don't make the mistake I did. And just kind of go out there and try to kind of start something from scratch. Takes courage, man. Like, I don't think I have that, right? Like, the upbringing that I had was very, very conservative, patriarchal. Like, I was never trying to be that person. But if you have an upbringing that can give you all of that, that security, that sense of security. My parents were like, no money after 18. I've not taken a single cent from my parents after the age of 18. So it's a very different mentality to actually have, especially in a country like India. So it's go and build something even if people are laughing at you. That's kind of what. The adversity that you'll account and have over a period of time will result in suffering, and I hope suffering happens to you. Jensen says it nicely, and nicely I don't. And then for investors, it would be, why aren't you founders? Why do you want to become an investor? I fundamentally believe if somebody is if I fundamentally believe if somebody is an aspiring investor, you need to have a very, very, very articulate why. And it cannot be, because the salary is good. Because if that is your answer, you're going to be a shitty as fuck.
What's your why?
My why is very, very weird. My why is I wanted to change the world and I went into non-profit. So if you stalk me on LinkedIn, you would have seen that. For 2.5 years, I was in non-profit working with the Prime Minister's office. And the organization that I was part of, their sister organization, which was 15 years elder to that, was in the education space. And after like a year and a half of being in the company, I was overlapping with the edtech people, the education people, and I asked them like the impact that they were making, what all they had done. I was reading up about it. I was working with the officials. I was trying to understand the layers. And after like so much diligence, I came to the conclusion that Google had done more for India's education than $2 billion in education non-profit that had been spent in the last 20 years. So the minute I saw that, I was like, that was my purpose. That tech solves fundamental social problems way more than non-profits does. And it's sad that I'm literally somebody who's in her 20s, worked at non-profits, and is completely against philanthropy now. That was like my red pill moment for capitalism, I put it that way.
Yeah.
So because I came from finance, and that was my red pill moment for capitalism, and I love tech, venture capital was the obvious step for me. So I wrote actually a blog about this, I remember, and then I deleted it, and I still have it somewhere. And then when I was like entering VC officially, and I sent that blog, and I won't name the person, very senior, very, like, I'm sure you know that person. He said that, Ash, this blog made me cry. Because that's literally the emotion that I felt, because I was so passionate about changing the world. And you don't do something for 2.5 years in your 20s. You don't take a 80%, 73% salary cut from finance to do something, especially coming from very little to no money, when you don't feel that much passion about something. So to me, the question is why? Why do you want to be an investor? Like, if you want to do something meaningful, and if you want to be basically somebody who has purpose in terms of bringing change, be a founder. It goes founders, operators, VCs. And I've said this, and a large number of VCs hate me for it. But this is the hierarchy, and the sooner people realize it, the better. Because founders, giving it their all, risking their life, all bets on one single thing. Operators, again, early stage, joining something that's some funding, some not sure what will happen, or definitely have like better options elsewhere, still choosing to do this. VCs, safe job, secure, very, very risk-averse people, salaried, money would be made irrespective whether you perform or not. You'll get fired in 5 years, but you'll obviously be paid for those 5 years. Right? And paid well for those 5 years. Like, why VC? Ask yourself the why. And if you don't have an articulate why, you're not born to be a VC. I fundamentally believe people are born to be a VC, and I don't mean like, you can be a legacy hire in a VC fund. More about that off but you need to have every successful VC that I know, like when I say successful, has bagged more than 2 unicorns at like early stage. All of us, we chat very, very often. It's a very close-knit community. Not one of them has a bullshit one. Not one.
Interesting.
It's very, very compelling. Like some of them have brought me to tears. So that's what, like, this is a privilege. This job is a privilege. And you actually have fundamental life experiences that brings you to this profession. It's not something you apply for and, upload your resume for. You're an associate analyst and you're not like running something that powerful, that meaningful. It's not worth it if you're not excited about it. So ask yourself why you want to be a VC and just go and be a founder instead if you're young and if you have not that much suffering in life. To anybody in their 20s, everyone will give you professional advice. I'll give you personal. Do not underrate the people who are too nice. I think that's a mistake a lot of us make. If somebody's too nice, we take them for granted. We think that their value is less. If nobody else wants them, their value is less. Do not let external validation convince you that somebody is not worth something. And the minute you enter your late 20s and your 30s and 40s, you realize how hard it is to find real friends. Like the richest people in the world today, okay, no, I'm not gonna name, but the richest people and let me put it this way, all the billionaires that I know have maximum 3 close friends. And they also are doubtful about the second or the third.
Absolutely.
So there's a reason why. Like, do not take true intent and somebody's niceness and somebody's purity for granted. Professionally, everyone will guide you. There's like a lot of thought leaders now. But personally, I think this is very, very important. Invest in those relationships. Like, just be there for them. Do not let them feel like they are just a burden in your life. They are a gift from God. They are more important than $1 billion. Is what I'm trying to say. And when you die, money is not going to serve you. You'll hire nannies, you'll hire doctors, you can pay for things, but you can't pay for this one true sense of satisfaction, which you only get from a real, true-bred partner and real, true-bred friends. I see you looking at him, so like, cherish that.
Notice how he didn't look at me.
He's looking at me. I'm going to take that as a compliment.
That's such a beautiful message. Guys, invest in relationships, understand your why. Stalk Ash Arora on Twitter because she's got some phenomenal opinions, and tune in for the next episode of Panoramic Perspectives. We love you guys. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure.